Welcome to part 3 of the Stranger Things Season 5 opening sequence homage. In the previous 2 videos, we went through building the scene and creating a stage and building our trees, setting up particles and all that. This part will likely be a little longer than the others. We'll be building the atmosphere, creating the fog, lightning, materials, and really just building that look for our project. I've saved a copy of what we've done so far as a file in the free resources bundle. If you haven't been following along in the previous videos, you can download this file in the free resources bundle. The link's here and in the description. So let's get going. Okay, this is what we had so far. We set up our cameras. We've got this nice camera pass. We've got this zoom into our hero tree. And we've got a final scene. I'll go ahead and play it because we've got particles simulations happening. You can see all the green particles being generated in there. And so they've got the nice particle flakes sort of flying around, cameras in position, using the stage object to swap cameras as we go through. And great. So it's looking really good. We'll go ahead and start now with building some vines in the background. So that's one part we are missing in terms of our models, is just having nice vines in the background. So I'm going to uncheck the stage object and I'm going to stop looking through my camera. And I can see where my cameras are in my scene. Actually, I'm also going to uncheck the basic emitter in the flakes and make sure that this tree is kind of standing alone by itself, is not in there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. So we can close down our flake system, begin drawing some vines. So to do that, I'm going to start with just drawing some splines using this spline tool, the sketch tool. So I can see my camera moving across here. I can see sort of where it is and where our hero tree is in space. And I want to make sure I fill this in with some of those vines on the ground. So to do that, I want to use the snap tool. So I'm going to click on this enable snap, but I'm going to click on the gear. We'll enable snap, and I'm going to disable point and enable polygon. And that should do us well. All right, so with this sketch tool selected, I can now begin just drawing. And so I'll do a few vines, splines, and then set up our sweep object in a second. So I'm just going to sort of randomly make little curvy splines that are kind of connected. And keep doing that. So I'll get it started and then I'll fast forward so you don't have to watch me do all this the entire time. I just want to start up with how we're going to make these function. So I'm going to create an inside and I'm going to sweep that along this spline using a sweep object. We'll make this about, I don't know, 10 or 20. Maybe we'll do 20 to start with. And we will grab this and this, put it in here. So you can see what we've got is these nice splines being swept out as sort of vines. Well, let's come into our spline and change the type of the spline. It's important to think about like how it's being generated. And I always like to use, for things like this, the natural. And I think even just coming down to 2. So we don't want to make things any more complicated than we need to. So let's go back into our sweep object. Let's go to the end scale and just turn that down a little bit. Maybe we'll go like 50%. And let's put some caps on there. We'll make those kind of big. So that's going to round off those tips a little, right? So we don't want them to be bigger than the splines are, but let's see. We can maybe give it an extra set of segments. Yeah, 3 is fine. So now each of these should be getting a cap on the beginning and the end. And with that done, we can just begin drawing more splines. So to get back into this spline, I want to select it and use my sketch tool again, and I can just begin drawing more. I might want to occasionally just look through my pan cam. And you can see that those splines I drew are very much in the foreground. And so I'm going to draw some more, and they're going to be in the background. I want to make sure I'm focusing around our hero trees here, but there are some on the ground there as well. And so I'll get out of that. That gives me a feeling for what I need to do next. So I'll focus now on this little back section. These don't by any means need to be perfect. They're just going to be wonky little wiggly splines on the ground, and just trying to fill in the space a little. If you want to follow the terrain some, you can. So I'll fast forward here and we'll get to the next part. Okay, now that we've drawn a bunch of these, let's use our pan cam and see how it's feeling. I think that's going to work out pretty well for us. So I've kind of climbed up on the trees with some of these, and we'll smooth them out a little bit as we go. But I think we've got, enough. I might add a few more, like back in here or something. So I'm pretty happy with the way the splines are looking, and our vines are looking really nice. And so I'm going to go ahead and just put this sweep object inside of a subdivision surface, and that's going to smooth them out for us. We might want to come in and make a couple adjustments here and there, like maybe grab a node or two. You want to make sure that you turn off your snap before you start doing these kinds of things. I'm just going to do that so I can grab that spline and move it up. So if you want to make any adjustments to your spline, now's a good time to do that. But overall, I think I'm pretty happy, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. Wonderful. Okay, we've got our splines in place. Now we're going to move on to just putting some basic materials in. And we'll start off actually with those splines. And to do this material for the splines, I'm just going to use a simple noise. So let's go ahead and create a new material, and we'll begin setting up all of our materials now. That'll be the next part before we bring in our lighting. Overall, I want to keep these materials kind of dark. Okay, so the first material that I want to create is for our vines. And to do that, I'm going to make a new material, and I'm going to open it up into the node editor. And I want to use just a max on noise, so I'm double clicking in here. I'm going to find the max on noise node. And this creates a texture that we can work with to port into the color and the roughness and the displacement channel, but actually we have to do something else for that. Let's add a displacement node. Displacement node wants the texture ported into it and out into the displacement. And then we have control over here about how much height it's going to have. We also need to, in order for that to even work at all, and let's prove this. Let's open up our Redshift render view. And if we hit play right now, it's going to show us a render. It's got no material on it yet. Let's put this material on our sweep object. And so you can see that noise is being applied, but it is not displacing or anything like that. I can zoom in here with my camera. We can get a better view of some of these. And so let's look at this. I think first let's go ahead and change the noise. I'm going to use I think Booyah for this one. It looks, I think, the closest to sort of the way the vines look in the movie. And I'm not going for 100% perfection here. A lot of this is going to be very dark. I just want the vines to have some, nice quality. So you can play around with the octaves and the scale and all of that inside here. If you want to change the scale, you come to input, like I could hit 200 and that's going to double the scale. You could play around with numerous things. Like if you think you want more nuance in there, you could double the octaves, or you could try reducing the octaves to something like 2 and see if you're happy with that. Not very interesting. So I'm going to go back to 5. And then I want to now use this to also not only add color, but also to add the displacement. And I set it up to do that, but I don't see any displacement happening. And that's because there's one more thing we have to do. For each object that you want displacement on with Redshift, you have to go into the render tags and add a Redshift object. And then you want to go to the geometry tab, click on this override, and then click on enabled. And once you do that, you should see some displacement happening. I'm not seeing a ton of displacement happening. Let's come in here and change this scale to like 3. Aha, there it is. So you can see that it is actually displacing for us. So it's using that noise channel to make some nice displacements for us. It's rather bumpy right now. This is what we're going to do. We're going to duplicate this. It's the same noise, right? But in this one, I'm going to port this one to the displacer, and I'm going to reduce the number of octaves to like 3. So it's going to keep the same texture overall, but it's going to have less detail, and that's going to have the effect of rounding things off. So now if I come into my displacement map and make the height a little stronger, we should see a lot more smooth sort of bump happening on our object. So just a little trick when you're using noise to get things to look a little softer. Great. Now that I've got that set up and I'm pretty happy with the way it's rendering, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm copying this onto all of my vines. And so the way I'll do that is to come up to search here and just search for the word sweep. I used sweep objects for all the vines in the project, so I should be able to just control drag this down to every sweep object that I created. And what that will have done now is put that same material on all my vines in my trees that are being duplicated throughout the project. So pretty cool. All right, I've got vines coming up my trees. I've got vines on the ground. Pretty happy with that. When we're done with that, we can just hit this X button, close this down. I'm going to quickly just kind of go through and label everything. I'm going to stop looking at my camera. So here, tree, jumper tree, that's clear. Flake system, clear. What is this? This is left wall. This is right wall. This is back wall. And this is our ground. Trees. I'm going to actually just call this forest. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to be able to select trees in the future and see all the trees so I can apply materials more easily. And so I'm just going to call that forest. Okay, so that's a little bit more organized. I'm going to drop these all 3 back down below. Now I need to grab a couple more textures, and I want to create those for the floor, for the trees, and for the rocks and the surroundings. And the floor and the rocks are not hugely important to this scene because we really can't see them all that clearly after we add the fog and everything in. So we just need something that looks good. Well, let's go ahead and get some practice in. And so I'm going to rather than use the materials in Cinema 4D because I don't have the capsules option. If I come in here to like natural and try to find a lot of the materials I would want to use for this, they're capsules and I can't access them without paying more for my Maxon subscription. So Luckily, there's a place called Polyhaven out there on the internet, and we're going to go check that out. So I'll bring it over here to the screen. So polyhaven.com is a wonderful resource. If you haven't looked at it, please support them if you use them. I've given them some donations in the past, because I use their work quite a lot. And HDRs, you can get all sorts of HDR environments, you can get models, and you can get textures. So this is just one place. Quixel is another great place to get textures. I'm going to use this for our project. So let's go out to the terrain button here on the left, and I'm going to scroll down to, I like this lichen rock. I think I'm going to maybe use that. There's some mud ones down here. There are two different mud ones, mud 1, mud 2. I think I'll use mud 2 for our ground. And so I'm just going to come up here to this 4K section and hit download. And it's going to remind me to donate and be a good person. And I think I will grab a couple more. One I want to have is for the rock on the wall. It could be something like this. It could be like a rock face. Maybe this one will be good. Let's try this one. That could be nice. Okay, so I'll use this one for the rocks in the background. And then I need some bark for our trees. So I'm going to come out here to the wood section. And I think there's like a pine bark in here that looks pretty nice. This one. There's a bunch of different barks you could choose. You can vary your trees if you want to. I'm just going to use one. So let's use this pine bark, and I'll download that. So I've got 3 different textures: the pine bark, the rock faced, and the brown mud 02. And we'll look at how to use these. So thank you very much, Polyhaven. You guys are awesome. Let me unzip those. I'm going to come to my downloads, extract these. So I'm just making a Polyhaven's materials folder inside my project, and I'm going to drag those. I'm going to drag those in there, just so they're organized in my project file well. And now we can close this up. Let's go ahead and start with the ground. I'm going to make a ground material that'll cover this floor. And to do that, all I need to do is make a new material and open it. I'll come out and find my Polyhaven pine bark. It downloaded it as a Blender file with textures, and that's totally fine. I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to just drag and drop them right into my node editor. And it's asking me, do I want to copy these? I'm going to say no, 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 no. They're already organized in my folder, and that's good enough for me. So this diff is the diffusion, which is the color. We've got a displacement, which we'll use for our displacement. We've got some roughness, so I'll port that into my reflection. And then we've got a normal map here I could use for bump, or I could actually use that for displacement as well. And let's get these ported out. So one thing, I think that this color is going to be too sort of rich for our project. And so what I want to do is sort of have the ability to control that. And so I'm going to go ahead and use this one for the roughness for reflection. And for this one, I want to do a color correction. So I'm looking for color, correct node. And the way this works is you output it from your color into this, and then you put this out into your color channel. And now I have the ability to make some adjustments to like gamma, so I can make it darker by decreasing the gamma. I could reduce the saturation scale so it's not so bright. And I think these things will be helpful for us as we kind of move on, right? So that's looking pretty cool, I think. I said I was going to make the ground, and I started making the tree. So I'm paying attention. We're going to do the tree first. So we're making our tree bark, and let's actually just find all of our trees now. So I'm searching for tree, and every single one of these I want to apply this material. Let's do our hero tree. So we can kind of see the material being wrapped around it. It's not looking amazing. Because of the way we made the trees, they don't really have great UVs, and I don't want to spend time with this project unwrapping UVs so that I can get a great map. I think I can simply change this to cubic and get something that's going to work, right? So because of the way we're looking at the angles of this, it's going to be fine. So we can start to see this like dark, nasty bark color on there. If I want to brighten it back up, I can. So it's not quite so dark. If I want to give it a tiny bit more saturation, I might do that too. So it's getting a little bit of color in there. So cool, that's how that's going to function. Let's go ahead and build our displacement so that we can see that as well. I'm going to get this material working perfectly and then displace. I did bump. So we'll put this in here and output there. Oops. Output to displacement. And let's go ahead and pull our Redshift render view up again. I've been using the Redshift render view lately instead of going to start IPR. And the reason for that is I'm getting fewer crashes. So I also like the way that this sort of works better. The downside is you can't rotate inside this. You got to actually rotate on your camera view. But you can see what's happening here, right? So this is with the displacement object. We'll set this to 3 and see how it looks. Like I don't love the way that's looking. I think I might want to use. So I got the displacement map on there, but I still have to put my Redshift tag on. So let's do tags, render tag Redshift object. Override the geometry, turn the tessellation on. I still don't love the way that that's looking. I think I might try some manipulation to this. To do that, I think I'm just going to use another one of those color correct nodes. And I'm going to increase the contrast. So just making some manipulations to the gamma and the contrast level. And that's going to give us more sort of dimensionality to our bark. I'm going to increase this even more. Yeah. That's cool. That's kind of what I wanted. All right, so we've got some vines, we've got some bark. The vines overall are looking a little too bright to me. I think I'm sorry for bouncing around, but I don't like the way that's looking. So I'm going to come into my first max on noise here, and I'm just going to bring this down. I'm not going to touch the second one here. I want it to be still displaced that way. I just didn't want it to be so much white in it. Add a little bit more grossness to that. Cool. I'm happier with that. I wanted those to feel a little bit more similar in appearance. Okay, now that I've got this tree done, let's go ahead and copy it down to all the other trees. Great. So our trees are all populated with the color, and the vines are too. Label this vines, and let's make our ground. Go ahead and pop it on the ground. Let's go ahead and make the rock as well. Stop that for a little bit. So for our ground material, let's go in and grab this brown mud and grab these textures, and we'll put them in there. We don't want to copy these. Same thing, I want a color correction in here just in case I want to do something. So we'll pop that out here and here. I've already got my material on my ground plane, and I've got a Redshift object on there. Right now it is tiling 6 times, and that's looking pretty good. I think we could try fewer tilings. And that'll probably work well. So let's pop a displacement in here. It's doing a little something, and we'll give it like, I don't know, 3. And let's put our reflection roughness in. I don't love that. I'm gonna try to use this instead. Yeah, I like a little bit of the reflection in there, so it feels a little more wet, and this displacement map has more variety in it, so I'm just gonna delete that. Okay. So we've got our ground in there. We can manipulate the color in a little bit if we decide we want to do that. Let's go ahead and make this rock wall as well. We'll bring in our rock face. Oops. Rock face textures. No. And just kick that over here. Add the color, separate correct layer in here. I think same thing, I'm going to use the reflection for that and the displacement. Crap. And we'll put this on our walls. Grab the and I definitely want to tone that color down a little bit. So bring the gamma down and the saturation down. I think I want to take advantage of that normal I just deleted and go ahead and add a bump in for that wall and for the ground. Let's go back and find that. So here's the normal map. I'm going to use this for the bump, and to do any kind of bump maps we have to do the same thing. We've got to come in and add a bump node, and we'll add the bump here and port that to the bump there. That should give us a little bit more dimensionality. And then maybe we'll come into these walls and just kind of give them a little bit of tiling, like maybe 3, 3, 3. And I might just turn the overall reflection down to like 0.5. I think that's going to be all right. So right now we've got a pretty dark scene, right? We've got our tree set up. Look at that texture we've got coming in on that tree. It looks very tree-like. It looks better than the demo version I created. And so this is cool. We've got all of our materials, at least baseline, set up. And so now we can start thinking more about some lighting and just building in that overall fog layer. And so let's do that. All right, so now that we've got our materials kind of in place, let's go ahead and put our atmosphere and fog in. And we'll get this looking more like this upside down sort of space. So the first thing I want to do is add a dome light. And I'm going to use so I'm going to come into the light section here and say dome light. And I want to use an HDR in there, so I'll come into the HDR, my asset browser. I'm going to stop rendering this for now. We'll come up to all and come up to the HDR folder. And a lot of these are capsules, so we can't actually access them, but there is one that I like and have used quite often that is not a capsule. And so, which one is it? It's this one. So I'll zoom in here. So this dusk sky object is available for you in your asset browser. You should be able to access it. If you don't like this one and don't want to use it, I recommend going back to Polyhaven and going back to Polyhaven and looking at their HDR objects. There are beautiful outdoor skies, cloudy, not so cloudy, just wonderful skies that you can choose from to download. But having said that, I'm going to go ahead and use the one that I was using before. So just wanted to remind you about that. So let's go ahead and drag this into our path for our dome light. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to rotate so that I'm facing this direction here. So in this second camera, go ahead and turn this back on so that we can see the background. It's going to be very dark at the beginning. And I'm just going to rotate it the other direction here. So we're starting to see some of that open sky in the background, just to give it a little bit more textural variety. I'm going to pump this up to something like 10, which seems like a lot, but we're getting some basic general lighting from it, which is kind of nice. It's giving us these little highlights in the backgrounds and a little bit of backlighting from our, for our objects. I'm also going to change the color to be a sort of that slightly towards aqua blue, like a blue-gray. That's kind of what we see in the program, and it's kind of what we see for the color of the world, right? So we can manipulate it a little bit. So it's giving it that tinge. And, I like to keep the intensity at a reasonable space and then just use the exposure value if I want more. So we'll see if this is what I want or not. You always want to just kind of manipulate that. I know I want to add a couple more lights in. So right now we've lost a little bit of that highlight that we had before, and that's okay. Maybe I'll move it back around a little bit. It's still there. I'm going to pump the intensity up to 2. And yeah, okay, I'm digging that. I just want some of that sort of like atmospheric lighting in the background. So that's cool. Let us go ahead and put in some front lights. All right, so I'm going to put in a couple of these area lights in the front. I'm going to make them pretty wide and pretty tall. I'm going to place these out here. One over here. Control C, Control V, put another one over here, so we've got 2 lights. And this will be kind of lighting up these trees in the foreground as we move by for us and providing some little bit of warmth. I'm going to grab both of these and just change the color to a slightly orangey warm color. So even in this scene, that's giving us a little bit of sort of highlight to create some drama. Make sure I've saved this. And from here, I think I want to go ahead and add in my fog. And so I'm going to create a Redshift object. The way fog works in Redshift is you create an environment object, and that generates the fog. So already you can see we've got this nice foggy background. It's pretty cool, right? So if we scroll through here now, we've got a swampy sort of dark scene. It's already getting there. But I want to push this even further. I want to change the way this fog looks. And I want to change some of these settings. I want a little more fog, so I'm going to say 0.05 here and thicken it up. But I am going to change the color of that fog so that it matches our environment a little bit more. So I'm going to bring in a similar sort of color to it. Just sort of like a subdued grayish blue. And now I want to create a material that's going to control the way the fog looks, right? So I want it to have more of a sort of fluffy light and dark look. And so I want to create a new material in here, and I'm sorry, I did that wrong. I'm going to go up to Create, Material, Volume. So it's Create, Materials, Volume. And this volume material I'm going to put on my Redshift object. So it has no effect at the immediate applying it, but now let's double click here. And let's disconnect this Redshift volume. So we've got nothing applied to it, and we're going to use a max on noise again. So we can grab our max on noise and port that right into our volume. And it is already doing it. It is making a noise for a volume. It's just that it's tiny. I'm going to come in here and change the type of noise to FBM. And then I'm going to scroll down to Input, Scale, and I'm going to pump this up to huge, like 10,000. Okay, so I don't see a lot of difference right now, but let's make some changes. So what if we, trying to find the best way to be able to see all of this on the screen. And maybe we want to sort of clip things a little bit. So we'll come to the output and maybe bring up this low clip, and output will bring down. So hopefully you can see that starting to give us this starting to give us this variation in our foggy appearance, right? So that's pretty cool. And if we start to scroll through our scene now, we'll see that we're going to have light and dark areas. The fog just kind of seems to be broken up and sitting in there. I think that's looking nice. I think it could be bigger even. I think the scale could be something like 20,000. And once you do this, now you can make some other changes and you can get a better sense for sort of what these settings are really doing. So if I look at a view like this and then I change something like, what happens if I increase the lacunarity? You can actually see it changing in real time. If I decrease it, it gets bigger. Swoopiness, I kind of, somewhere in between where I was and where we are right now, I think is where I want to be. So just play around with this value with yours until you are feeling happy with the way it's looking. Now, right now it's going to be sort of a mix of playing around with this value and playing around with like how much fog it's actually generating. So I might now, I'm pretty happy with the way that's looking. I'm going to come into my environment, and I might maybe change my fog emission color to that blue as well, so just kind of like a darker version. Actually, I don't think this is having any effect at all. That's all right. Maybe what I want to do is reduce the scattering or the volume on my dome light. I think I just want to turn down. So I'm coming to my dome light, I'm going to the details section, and under volume, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Right, so if I turn this down to 0, it's going to reduce the amount of volume that my dome light is creating. So I'm turning it down, so maybe 0.5 or so. I'm also going to decrease the volume visibility on both of these area lights, and I'm going to turn them down all the way so there's no volume being generated. So all we're getting right now is volume being created by this dome light. So this solely is controlling the fog level that we're getting. So I want to use 2 lights to kind of control this fog level. I'm going to do like 0.5 for this one. Scroll through, see how I feel about it. It's pretty cool. It's working. I'm going to pay particular attention to this one and change this a little bit. So 0.2. Just going to tone it down. I want to be able to see some of this coming through. Yeah. All right, so one more step. Let's make this fog move. I'm going to come back in and edit this material. So I'm looking at the max on noise in my fog material, and there's a section here that says speed. And I'm just going to click this to like 0.1 or maybe 0.2. And you'll get a sense for how fast it's moving by going through your timeline with the viewer open, right? If I change it to, let's change it to 1 just so we can see it clearly. If it's on 1, you can see as I'm moving through that fog is moving, right? So it's got a lot of motion, and that's not going to feel realistic at all. So I think 0.2 is going to give us a better sense. So as we move here and zoom through kind of fast. Oops, I did it in the wrong spot. Oh. 0.2. So now it's still moving, but it's moving very slowly, right? So it's just going to appear to be kind of just rolling in around a little bit. So I like that. Okay, we've got our materials in place. We've got our fog in place. Let's put one more light in. Make sure you save your file. This time I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to put an area light in. It's going to take up our entire space. And this is going to give us just another layer of fog that we can play with and also add a little bit more of that blue atmosphere we're looking for. So let's add another area light. Rotate it 90 degrees. I'm going to make it wide and deep. I'm going to move it up. Well, this is obviously just blowing things out completely right now. I'm just going to have it like slightly above the trees, I think. I'm going to take this object tab and I'm going to decrease the spread so it's not shining out. Why is that not affecting it? We'll play with that in a bit. All right, so let's make this one a little bit lighter blue. So that's what it's doing, is it's you saw that overall view. It's giving us this fog layer that's really bright. And I want to use that, but I want to tone it down quite a lot. And so I'm just going to take it and decrease the intensity to something like 2. So this can give us this sort of eerie, like otherworldly glow inside there. 2's too much actually, so let's do 0.5. And we'll tone this color down quite a lot. So it just adds another like subtle layer of fogginess, and you'll see these trees in the background are a little bit more covered up than they were before. I feel like this could be, I don't know, I feel like it could be darker. It's a little too bright to me, so I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to bring this down to bring this one back up. And I'm going to come into this ground, and I don't like the green that I'm seeing, so I'm going to just come in and change that saturation level. And darken it up. And that's better. Likewise with our trees, I feel like our trees are too saturated. right now. And so I'm going to come in to the trees, grab that, and reduce that saturation scale even more. Just making some adjustments so I'm a little happier with the way things are feeling. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so we made a few adjustments there. Let's put some lightning in our scene, and we'll be just about finished with this part. So I'm going to start off with just some lights. So we'll save this, and we're going to create, I think, just 2 lights, and we'll actually make one and then duplicate it for the other one. So we'll do our sort of main light first, and I want to kind of time this lightning crash out so that it's about right there, right? And so what I want to do is create another area light. I'll stop our rendering here. Same as before, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this down 90 degrees. We'll make it big. I'm going to make this one a disk instead of a rectangle. And I want to make it bidirectional. And so it's going to be shining up and down. And I'm going to make it bright, bright red for the red lightning that we have going on in the upside down. While I'm looking at this scene, I am going to go ahead and turn my render view back on. And I'll take this light and move it up into the sky. I want it in my scene. I want it to be lighting up the sky right behind my trees. And so I want it pretty high. And I want it pretty huge. So you can see the way that it's lighting up the clouds in the background because we've got this atmosphere set up. And so I want to change, I like the position of it right now. I'm going to change the intensity. I'm going to double it. So it's really flashing and lighting up these scenes. You can see how it will appear when the light comes on earlier in the scene and later. And so all I really have to do is animate the intensity of this. So we'll bring up this dope sheet and just play around with that intensity level for this light. I'll scroll down. So I want to go to maybe the first point where I want it to be pretty bright. Maybe, I don't know. We'll say 60 frames in, okay. We can move it very easily. So at 60 frames in, I'm going to say I want that intensity to be right there. And then using G and F on the keyboard, if you didn't know, those are the keys to move a step ahead. So I want this to kind of happen twice. I want it to go up from a few frames back from 0. And back to 0. And then I'll keep that 0. And then I want it to kind of rumble again, not go quite as bright, so maybe 150. Back to 0 there. So we've got 2 flashes of lightning there. One's brighter than the other. The first one's brightest. I'm going to pop that up to 250. Okay, I'm feeling pretty happy with the way that's looking. And so I'm going to do this. We want to see this intensity curve. And I'm going to select this area light, come into the after, under the properties, and select repeat. At about 210 or so, I'm going to add a 0 keyframe for the intensity. And at 0, I'm going to add a 0 keyframe. And what that does is it gives me about a 7-second loop, right? So if you remember from if you saw the season, the lightning happens about every 7 seconds. So that's why that number's there. And so hopefully what this should do is we've got a flash, and then we're going to switch to this room. We go lightning crash, and then another one rumble. I feel like I want that little second one to be a little softer, so I'm just going to select that value now and knock it down to 100. And so we've got a really intense bright flash, followed by a little not so intense flash. So that's our main lightning, and now I'm going to duplicate this one and copy and paste it. Stop looking through our render view. This one, I haven't keyframed any of the positions or scales or anything like that, so this one I'm going to bring down a little lower. I'm going to pull it back behind these rocks, make it really wide. So it's kind of flashing just behind there, so we don't really see it, but it's lightening up in that background area. Right, so it's gonna, and what I want to do with that one is just offset it a little bit. So I'm just gonna grab these frames and I'm gonna pull it so that it's offset, so it's coming from a different area. Maybe I'll push it closer. And this one I might decrease the level so it's not quite so high. Maybe the second one's a little higher. That just gives us some variety in our lightning. I want this one to be a different length. So it's not so regular. And let's see how that looks through our render view. So now we've got this rolling, rumbly lightning happening in this scene that I just love, right? Because these are offset by just a little bit from each other and overlapping a little bit. So that's kind of nice. We'll have this rolling thunder sort of appearance happening in there. So that's our whole piece with the lightning flashes in place. I think the final thing I want to work on is putting the lightning bolt in place. Our flashes are happening, our lightning is in place. What we want to do now is just add one lightning bolt right here. And we want that to be beautiful and big and zigzaggy. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to stop looking at my preview. Right now I'm going to come into a new file. And in this new file, I'm going to look at the front view. So you just click that button right here. It's the middle mouse button if you have a middle mouse button to toggle back and forth to different views. So I want to be in the front view. I'm just going to simply use my tracer object, and I'm going to start in the middle here. I'm going to pan up so that the center of my world is up at the top. And I'm just going to design the lightning bolt the way I think it should look. Looks good to me. Okay, once we've got our lightning bolt looking the way we want, we can change this to something like natural, reduce down the number of points to 0, and it's going to be more jaggedy like that, so it's just individual corners. And then we'll take this spline, we'll call it lightning bolt. And we're going to copy this. We're going to come into our main file and we're going to paste it. And so that's going to come in as a spline object. And all I really want to do is position this right underneath that light and scale it appropriately. Right? So tools, transfer to area light 3, apply. Great. And so now the lightning bolt is living up there in our sky. It rotated it for me. I didn't want that to happen, so I'm going to rotate it down 90 degrees. I'm going to rotate it around 90, maybe 90, I don't know. Just rotating it until I'm happy, and then I'm going to scale it until it is the size that I want it to be in my scene. Right? So we may need to reposition things, and that's okay. I'm going to reposition it so it's just coming in out of frame where I want it to be there, and just scaling it until I'm happy with the sort of position it's taking up in the scene. Right? It doesn't really matter if it's going off the frame. We can't see it at all right now. That's okay. And even if I hit render right now, we're still not going to see it. So how do we get this lightning bolt to light up and be in our space? Well, we do that by creating a material for it. So the first thing we're going to do is make a render tag, Redshift object, and we're going to tell this Redshift object curve to be in a hair strand. And so right now it's going to make a hair strand, but it doesn't have material on it, right? So we want that lightning bolt to show up. We need to make a material on it. We also probably need to make it thicker, like maybe 10. So you can actually see it right now. Can you? You can. It's right there. 10's not going to be enough. 30. How about 60? How thick does a lightning bolt need to be? We don't know yet. I'm going to take this scale, and at the end I'm going to grab the end point and I'm going to make it smaller so that the end parts of the bolt are smaller than the beginning parts. And we can manipulate that to our needs so that we get some variety in there. So now what I want to do is make a lightning material. That lightning material doesn't really need to have a color. It doesn't need any reflection. What it does need is emission. And so that emission color is going to be red. And the brighter we make this, the more like a lightning bolt it's going to feel. All right, so That was 10 in the emission channel. Let's close all these up. Uh, 100 is bright and lighting up our scene. It's maybe a little too much. Maybe it's good. So I feel like 100 is probably where it needs to be. So what we want to do now is just animate the scale of this lightning bolt from 0 to 100% over the amount of time we want it to be visible, right? So if I show where I'm at in this scene in terms of area light 3 when it's lighting up, I want the lightning bolt to appear right here and be 100% as this flashes. So let me just move. And we probably want the bolt to be like full scale, maybe 3 or 4 frames, not very long. 3 tops, I would say, actually. So let's animate this object coordinate, and we're going to just keyframe it at a 1 scale right now. Move forward 2 frames and give it another one, and then move forward like 3 or 4 frames, and it's going to be 0. So that's how it disappears. And I'll go a few frames before it. So let's go a few before here. And we will scale this to 0 also. And I feel like maybe the lightning bolt wants to come on just a tiny bit before the brightness shows up. So I think I'm just going to nudge this here. So what we'll see is as we move through frame by frame, the brightness is growing. I barely see the bolt, so I think I want to move it a tiny bit before still. I'm going to zoom in. I may want to tighten that up. So I'm just hitting F and G to kind of scroll through here to see how this feels. I'm just going to grab these first 2 and nudge them forward. Yeah, I feel like it's on the frame too much. Okay, now that we've got our bolt in place, it's looking pretty good. I think I want to just want to nudge these around a little bit. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and bring it a little closer. It's wigging out when the bolt comes in. I like that the flash is kind of like an echo, like reverberating behind it. I think that feels more realistic. And the way the sky is brightening up and now it's going to rumble. I'm going to go ahead and stop this part of this video here. The timing is looking nice. We've got our fog in place. Our flakes are already in there. So when we pick up in part 4, we'll turn our flakes on, set up our render, and then pull our rendered file into After Effects and add some finishing touches in audio and wrap this up. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you feel like you've learned something, please like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to download the free resources bundle so you can get access to all the pieces that I've given you for this. And I'll see you in part 4. Thanks.